The night was thick with silence as I stood before the decrepit mansion, its looming presence a stark contrast to the surrounding forest. This was the place that had haunted my dreams and whispered in my nightmares, the mansion of Dr. Wilhelm Reiner, the infamous scientist turned madman. The stories of his experiments, the screams that echoed through the halls, and the unspeakable horrors that took place within these walls had drawn me here. I had to know the truth, even if it meant facing my own madness. Chapter 1, The Invitation. The journey began with an invitation, a simple letter left on my doorstep. The handwriting was elegant, almost delicate, but the words were chilling. Come to the Reiner Mansion. Discover the secrets of the Forbidden Room. Your destiny awaits. I was a journalist, known for my investigations into the macabre and the mysterious. This was the story that could define my career, or end it. I packed my equipment, a flashlight and a revolver, knowing I might need it, and set off. As I approached the mansion, the moonlight cast eerie shadows on the crumbling facade. The air was thick with an almost tangible sense of dread. I took a deep breath and pushed open the heavy, creaking door. Chapter 2, The Entrance. The inside of the mansion was worse than I had imagined. Dust-covered furniture, cobwebs hanging from the ceiling, and the stench of decay permeated the air. My footsteps echoed as I made my way through the grand foyer, my flashlight casting long, flickering shadows. I felt a presence, a sense of being watched, but I saw nothing. I pressed on, determined to find the forbidden room and uncover the secrets within. The mansion's layout was a maze of hallways and rooms, each one more unsettling than the last. I found what seemed to be a study, its walls lined with bookshelves filled with tomes on anatomy, psychology, and obscure sciences. On the desk lay a journal, its pages filled with notes and sketches of grotesque experiments. Chapter 3, The Journal. I began to read, my heart pounding. The journal belonged to Dr. Reiner, and it detailed his descent into madness. He wrote of his quest to unlock the secrets of the human mind, to explore the limits of pain and suffering, and to transcend the boundaries of life and death. The experiments grew increasingly horrific. Subjects were subjected to unimaginable tortures. Their screams meticulously recorded and analyzed. The doctor's handwriting became more erratic, his thoughts more deranged. Pain is the key, he wrote. Through suffering, we can achieve enlightenment. The Forbidden Room holds the final secret. Only the worthy will understand. I felt a chill run down my spine. The Forbidden Room. It was here, somewhere in this mansion, and it held the answers I sought. Chapter 4, The Descent. I continued my search, the journal clutched in my hand. The deeper I went into the mansion, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing colder with each step. Finally, I found it, a heavy, iron door at the end of a narrow corridor. The door was adorned with strange symbols and runes, and it radiated a palpable sense of malevolence. I hesitated, my hand trembling as I reached for the handle. The whispers grew louder, indistinct voices urging me to turn back. But I couldn't. I had come too far. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open and stepped into the Forbidden Room. Chapter 5, The Forbidden Room. The room was a chamber of horrors. Chains hung from the walls, stained with blood. Instruments of torture were strewn about, knives, scalpels, and devices whose purposes I could only guess at. The floor was slick with what I hoped was only water, but the coppery smell suggested otherwise. In the center of the room stood a large table, its surface scarred and pitted. Strapped to the table was a man, his body broken and mutilated. His eyes were open, but they held no life. I felt bile rise in my throat. This was the work of Dr. Reiner. This was where he had conducted his final experiments. As I moved closer, I noticed something in the man's hand, a small, metal key. I pried it from his cold, stiff fingers, my mind racing. What did it unlock? Chapter 6. The Discovery. The key led me to a hidden compartment in the wall. Inside was a small, leather-bound book. Unlike the journal, this book was meticulously kept, its pages filled with diagrams and notes. It was a record of Dr. Reiner's final experiment, an attempt to transcend the boundaries of life and death. He believed that by inflicting extreme pain, he could push the human mind to a state of higher consciousness, to a place where life and death no longer held meaning. The experiment had failed, of course. The subjects had died in agony, their minds shattered. But the doctor had recorded everything, every scream, every moment of suffering. I felt a sense of revulsion and fascination. This was the culmination of his madness, the ultimate horror. I had to get out of here, to escape the suffocating darkness of the mansion. Chapter 7. The Escape. As I turned to leave, I heard a noise, a low, guttural moan. My heart pounded as I realized it was coming from the man on the table. He was still alive, barely. I approached cautiously, my flashlight revealing the extent of his injuries. His body was a ruin, his eyes glassy with pain. He looked at me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of recognition. "Help me." He whispered, his voice barely audible. I knew I couldn't leave him here. I searched the room for something, anything, that could help. I found a syringe filled with a clear liquid, morphine, perhaps. I injected him, hoping it would ease his suffering. As the drug took effect, he began to speak, his words slurred and disjointed. He spoke of the experiments, of the pain, of the madness that had consumed Dr. Reiner. He told me of a way out, a hidden passage that led to the forest outside. I followed his directions, the whispers growing louder as I made my way through the mansion. The passage was narrow and dark, but it led me to safety. Chapter 8. The Aftermath. I emerged from the mansion, the cold night air a welcome relief. I looked back at the crumbling structure, its windows dark and foreboding. I knew I had to tell the world what I had found, to expose the horrors that had taken place within those walls. But as I made my way back to civilization, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The whispers followed me, haunting my every step. I published my story, and it caused a sensation. The world was horrified by the revelations, and the mansion was condemned, its secrets buried. But for me, the nightmare was far from over. The whispers never stopped. They grew louder, more insistent, filling my mind with images of pain and suffering. I began to question my own sanity, to wonder if I had become just another victim of Dr. Reiner's madness. Chapter 9. The Return. Years passed, and the whispers continued to torment me. I knew there was only one way to silence them. I had to return to the mansion, to confront the darkness that still lingered there. I arrived at the mansion once more, the structure even more decrepit than before. The iron door to the forbidden room was still ajar, as if waiting for my return. I stepped inside, the familiar sense of dread washing over me. The room was unchanged, the instruments of torture still in place. But this time, I was not alone. The man from the table was there, his body whole and unmarked. He smiled at me, a smile that sent chills down my spine. "Welcome back," he said, his voice smooth and calm. "We've been waiting for you." I felt a surge of fear and anger. "Who are you?" I demanded. "What do you want?" He stepped closer, his eyes gleaming with a strange light. "I am the culmination of Dr. Reiner's work. The final experiment. And you, my friend, are here to complete it. Before I could react, he lunged at me, his hands closing around my throat. I fought back, my mind racing. The syringe. I grabbed it and plunged it into his neck, hoping it would have the same effect as before. He released me, staggering back. I took the opportunity to run, to escape the mansion once more. Chapter 10. The madness. I barely made it out, my body trembling with fear and exhaustion. The whispers were louder than ever, filling my mind with screams and pleas for mercy. I knew I was losing my grip on reality. I checked myself into a psychiatric hospital, hoping for some relief. The doctors tried to help, but nothing could silence the voices. I was trapped in a nightmare, unable to escape. One night, as I lay in my bed, I felt a presence in the room. I looked up to see the man from the mansion standing at the foot of my bed. "You cannot escape," he said, his voice a sinister whisper. "The experiment is not over." I screamed, but no sound came out. The darkness closed in, and I felt myself slipping into madness. Epilogue. The doctors found me the next morning, my mind shattered, my body broken. They said I had tried to take my own life, but I knew better. I had been attacked, hunted by the darkness I had unearthed. They restrained me, sedated me, and I was left in a drug-induced haze, drifting between nightmares and the cruel reality of my own mind. But the whispers never stopped. They grew louder, more insistent, filling my mind with images of pain and suffering. I knew that whatever I had unleashed in that mansion had followed me, and it would not rest until its dark purpose was fulfilled. Chapter 11. The awakening. Days turned into weeks, and I lay in my hospital bed, tormented by the whispers and visions of the forbidden room. I had become a prisoner of my own mind, unable to escape the horrors I had uncovered. But one night, something changed. The sedation was wearing off, and I could think more clearly. I realized that if I wanted to escape this torment, I had to find a way to confront and destroy the darkness once and for all. The whispers taunted me, but they also hinted at a way out, a final confrontation that could end the nightmare. I waited for the right moment, feigning compliance with the doctors and nurses. They believed I was too broken to be a threat, and they let their guard down. One night, when the hospital was quiet, I made my move. Chapter 12. The escape. I slipped out of my restraints and crept through the darkened halls of the hospital. The whispers guided me, leading me to the exit. I stole a set of clothes from a storage room and made my way outside, the cold night air a welcome relief from the stifling atmosphere of the hospital. I knew where I had to go, the mansion. The forbidden room held the key to ending this nightmare, and I had to face whatever horrors awaited me there. The journey back to the mansion was a blur. The whispers grew louder, urging me on. I felt a strange sense of purpose, as if I was being drawn to my destiny. Chapter 13. The final confrontation. The mansion loomed before me, its dark silhouette a stark contrast to the moonlit sky. I pushed open the heavy door and stepped inside, the familiar sense of dread washing over me. The forbidden room was just as I had left it, the instruments of torture still in place. But this time, the man was waiting for me. His eyes gleamed with a sinister light, and he smiled that same chilling smile. "Welcome back," he said, his voice smooth and calm. "Are you ready to complete the experiment?" I felt a surge of fear and anger. "Who are you?" I demanded. "What do you want?" He stepped closer, his eyes boring into mine. "I am the culmination of Dr. Reiner's work. The final experiment. And you, my friend, are here to complete it." Before I could react, he lunged at me, his hands closing around my throat. I fought back, my mind racing. The syringe. I grabbed it and plunged it into his neck, hoping it would have the same effect as before. He released me, staggering back. I took the opportunity to run, to escape the mansion once more. Chapter 14, The Labyrinth, but the mansion had changed. The corridors twisted and turned, leading me deeper into the darkness. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, filling my mind with screams and pleas for mercy. I stumbled through the maze of hallways, my flashlight flickering as I tried to find a way out. But every turn led me back to the forbidden room, the man waiting for me with that same chilling smile. "You cannot escape," he said, his voice a sinister whisper. "The experiment is not over." I felt a surge of desperation. I had to find a way to end this, to destroy the darkness that had consumed my mind. I searched the room for anything that could help, my eyes falling on the journal I had found on my first visit. The final entry held a clue, a cryptic message that hinted at a way to destroy the darkness. Through suffering, we can achieve enlightenment. The forbidden room holds the final secret. Only the worthy will understand. Chapter 15, The Revelation. I realized that the only way to end the nightmare was to confront the suffering, to face the darkness head-on. I had to endure the pain, to push through the madness and find the light on the other side. I strapped myself to the table, the man watching with a sinister gleam in his eyes. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice a whisper in the darkness. I nodded, my heart pounding with fear and determination. "Do it," I said, my voice steady. The man began the experiment, the instruments of torture cutting into my flesh. The pain was unbearable, but I fought to stay conscious, to push through the suffering and find the truth. The whispers grew louder, filling my mind with screams and pleas for mercy. I felt my mind slipping, the darkness closing in. But I held on, focusing on the light, the faint glimmer of hope that lay beyond the pain. Chapter 16, The Light. As the experiment reached its climax, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The pain began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace. The whispers grew quieter, the darkness receding. I realized that the suffering had been a test, a way to transcend the boundaries of life and death. I had faced the darkness and emerged on the other side, my mind clear and my soul free. The man watched with a look of awe and fear. "You did it," he said, his voice trembling. "You found the light." I stood, my body whole and unmarked. I looked at the man, my eyes filled with a newfound sense of purpose. "It's over," I said, my voice steady. "The experiment is complete." The man nodded, his face filled with a mixture of relief and fear. "What now?" he asked. I looked around the forbidden room, the instruments of torture now silent. "We destroy this place," I said. "We end the darkness once and for all." Epilogue. The end. We set fire to the mansion, the flames consuming the darkness and the horrors within. The whispers grew fainter, the screams fading into silence. I watched as the mansion burned, a sense of peace washing over me. The darkness was gone, the nightmare over. I had faced the horrors of the forbidden room and emerged on the other side, my mind clear and my soul free. I returned to the world, determined to use my experience to help others, to ensure that the darkness would never return. The mansion was gone, but the memories remained, a reminder of the horrors I had faced and the strength I had found. The whispers were silent, the darkness gone. I had found the light, and I would never let it go. Underscore 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 underscore. Chapter 17. The new beginning. Months passed, and I started to rebuild my life. The nightmares had subsided, replaced by a deep sense of purpose. I began writing about my experiences, hoping to shed light on the darkness I had encountered. My work gained attention, and soon I was traveling, speaking at conferences, and helping others confront their own demons, but the shadows lingered. Occasionally, I would hear a faint whisper, a fleeting reminder of the mansion's horrors. I dismissed them as echoes of my past trauma, a residual effect of the extreme suffering I had endured. One evening, as I was preparing for a lecture, I received a package. It was wrapped in plain brown paper, with no return address. Inside was a single item, a small, leather-bound journal. My heart skipped a beat as I recognized it immediately. It was Dr. Reiner's journal, Chapter 18, The Return. I opened the journal with trembling hands. The last few pages were filled with new entries, written in the same erratic handwriting. The entries described a new experiment, one that Dr. Reiner had initiated before his death. It spoke of a successor, someone who had continued his work in secret. My blood ran cold as I read the final entry. The forbidden room is not bound by walls. It exists wherever the mind can be broken, wherever pain can transcend reality. The experiment continues. A sense of dread washed over me. The mansion was gone, but the darkness had survived. It had found a new home, a new place to continue its twisted experiments. I knew I had to find this new location, to stop the successor before they could continue Dr. Reiner's work. The journal contained clues, cryptic references to places and people. I packed my bag, feeling the weight of my new mission settle on my shoulders. Chapter 19. The search. My search took me across the country, following the breadcrumbs left by the journal. Each clue led me deeper into a world of darkness and despair. I visited abandoned buildings, hidden laboratories, and underground bunkers, each one filled with its own horrors. The whispers grew louder with each step, guiding me, taunting me. I knew I was getting closer, but the journey was taking its toll. The lines between reality and madness began to blur. And I found myself questioning my own sanity. Chapter 20. The new forbidden room. Finally, I found it, a secluded facility in the mountains, hidden from the world. The building was nondescript, but the air was thick with the same malevolent presence I had felt in the mansion. I entered the facility, my heart pounding. The corridors were eerily similar to those of the mansion, filled with the same instruments of torture and experimentation. The whispers were deafening now, urging me forward. At the end of a long hallway, I found the new forbidden room. Inside, a figure stood over a table, their back to me. The room was filled with the same grotesque instruments, the walls adorned with the same strange symbols. The figure turned, and I was met with a face that mirrored my own. It was as if I was looking into a twisted reflection of myself, a doppelganger created by the darkness. "Welcome," the figure said, their voice a chilling echo of my own. "The experiment is not over. It will never be over." Chapter 21. The confrontation. I felt a surge of anger and fear. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Why are you doing this?" The figure smiled, a sinister gleam in their eyes. "I am you," they said. "I am the part of you that cannot let go of the darkness. The part that seeks to understand, to transcend." I realized then that the darkness had not only followed me, it had become a part of me. The mansion, the forbidden room, the experiments, they were all manifestations of my own mind, my own obsessions. I knew I had to confront this darkness, to face it head-on and destroy it once and for all. I stepped forward, the figure mirroring my movements. The confrontation was brutal, a battle of wills and minds. The room seemed to warp and twist around us, the instruments of torture coming to life. Pain and suffering filled the air, but I held on, focusing on the light, the faint glimmer of hope that lay beyond the darkness. Chapter 22, The Open Ending. As the confrontation reached its climax, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The pain began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace. The whispers grew quieter, the darkness receding, but as I looked into the eyes of my doppelganger, I saw a flicker of something, an understanding, a recognition. The figure smiled, a bittersweet smile, and I knew that the darkness would never truly be gone. It was a part of me, a part of the world. The facility began to crumble around us, the walls collapsing as the darkness retreated. I made my way out, the figure watching me with that same bittersweet smile. I emerged into the daylight, the fresh air filling my lungs. The whispers were silent, the darkness gone. But I knew it was not the end. The darkness would always be there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the moment to return. I walked away from the facility, my mind clear and my soul free. But as I looked back, I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was watching, waiting for its next opportunity. The experiment was not over. It would never be over. And I would always be ready, prepared to face the darkness once more. Epilogue. The new beginning. I returned to my life, determined to use my experience to help others, to ensure that the darkness would never return. The memories of the forbidden room and the horrors I had faced were a constant reminder of the strength I had found, but the shadows lingered, a reminder that the darkness was never far away. The whispers were silent, but I knew they could return at any moment. I had found the light, and I would never let it go. But the darkness was always there, a part of me, a part of the world, and so, the story continues. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience with a lingering sense of unease. The final scene hints at the endless struggle between light and darkness, and the open ending leaves the future uncertain.